There are moments in life when the heart wants what it wants, but the Spirit is saying something entirely different. And if you're listening carefully, not with your ears, but with your spirit, you'll discern that still, small voice urging you to let go. It's not always loud, it's not always dramatic, but it is always present. When God doesn't want you with someone, He doesn't just shout, He shows. And if you're paying attention, you'll see the signs. One of the first signs is a lack of peace. No matter how attractive the person may be, no matter how strong the chemistry, your soul never settles. You pray, you fast, and you still feel that nudge of unrest. That's not just anxiety, that's not just nerves. That is the Spirit of God saying, this is not it. Peace is the umpire of the heart, and when you don't have it, you need to stop and reconsider what you're holding on to. Then there are the red flags, not one, not two, but a pattern, lies wrapped in charm, control disguised as protection. You keep brushing it off, saying, nobody's perfect. But discernment is screaming, this isn't just imperfection. This is deception. The fruit doesn't lie. And if what's coming from them doesn't align with God's heart, don't pretend it does just because you're tired of waiting. Pay attention to your spiritual trajectory. If being with them dims your light, slows your calling, or silences your fire for God, you have your answer. God never sends someone who subtracts from your purpose. He doesn't connect you to someone who pulls you out of His presence. He aligns you with people who push you closer to your destiny, not away from it. Sometimes the sign is in the shut door. You try to make it work, but nothing flows. You pray for progress, but things fall apart. Don't call it coincidence. Call it divine disruption. God is too faithful to let you walk into a future that will destroy you. So He frustrates your plans, not to hurt you, but to redirect you, because what you thought was good, He knows isn't best. And then there's the whisper in prayer. When your heart is quiet, when you've stopped trying to convince yourself, and you finally ask, Lord, is this your will? And His answer is silence or sorrow. You've heard Him. He also confirms through wise counsel. The people who love you and walk with God will often see what your emotions are blinding you to. God speaks through them when your heart is too entangled to hear Him clearly. You don't have to force what's from God. Love that is sent by Him will bring peace, not pressure. It will align, not confuse. It will lift, not lower. You may want it, but if it costs you clarity, your calling, and your connection with the Lord, then it's not love. It's a lesson, and when God shows you, don't beg Him to bless what He's trying to block. Let go and trust that He has something better, something holy, something whole. There's a quiet language God speaks that doesn't always come with thunder or lightning. It's the language of peace. Not just any peace, but that deep, soul-level stillness that settles inside when you're in alignment with His will. When God doesn't want you with someone, one of the clearest signs He gives is the absence of that peace. It doesn't matter how perfect things look on paper. It doesn't matter if everyone around you thinks the relationship is a dream come true. If your spirit is constantly restless, if your heart feels uneasy every time you're around that person or thinking about your future with them, it's time to take that seriously. God leads His people through peace, and when that peace is absent, it's not just a feeling, it's a signal. You might try to rationalize it. You might say, maybe I'm just scared, or maybe I need more time to adjust. But deep down, you know the difference between nerves and a divine warning. Nerves pass, peace remains. But when that unsettled feeling lingers, it's not to be ignored. It's God's mercy at work. Sometimes the person checks all the boxes, but something just doesn't sit right. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. Your conversations leave you more drained than uplifted. Your prayer life starts to dry up, and even though nothing catastrophic has happened, everything feels off. The enemy is a master of counterfeits. He won't always bring you someone who's blatantly wrong for you. Sometimes he brings someone who's almost right, and almost can be dangerous when your peace is the price. That's why God puts that holy discomfort inside of you. It's not to confuse you, it's to protect you. He's saying, don't settle. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't override my voice for your desire. Peace isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. In Scripture, it's referred to as an umpire, something that makes the final call. That means when you're unsure, when you're torn between what your heart wants and what your spirit feels, peace is what settles the matter. If you don't have it, don't proceed. And if you lose it while walking with someone, pause and examine why. God is not the author of confusion. His presence brings clarity. His will brings rest. Now, here's the difficult part. Sometimes the lack of peace shows up when you're already deep in. You've made plans. You've envisioned a life together. You've given pieces of your heart away, and yet the unrest won't go away. That doesn't mean you failed. It means God is still giving you a way out. Don't confuse investment with divine approval. You can be fully committed to the wrong thing, and God in His grace will allow that internal unease to grow, not to punish you, but to rescue you. So when peace is absent, don't ignore it. Don't pray it away. Don't try to replace it with distractions. Lean into it. Ask God what He's showing you. His silence is not absence, and His nudges are not suggestions. They're direction. And when your spirit won't rest, it's often because He's whispering, this is not where you belong. When God doesn't want you with someone, one of the clearest patterns that begins to emerge is the presence of repeated red flags, those subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, warnings that something is not right. These red flags are not just flaws or quirks. They're consistent behaviors, attitudes, or habits that directly contradict the character of Christ and the values found in His Word. It's easy to explain away one red flag, maybe even two, especially when emotions are involved. But when you find yourself repeatedly seeing the same troubling signs, disrespect, dishonesty, manipulation, spiritual complacency, these are not coincidences. They are God's way of saying, this is not from me. People often get caught in the cycle of justifying what they know in their spirit is wrong. They say, he didn't mean it, or she was just having a bad day, or everyone has flaws. And while all of that may be true in isolation, red flags are not just flaws, they are patterns. When someone consistently shows you that they are not willing to grow, not open to correction, or not committed to living in truth and love, God is trying to show you that this person may not be part of your destiny. You may be praying for confirmation while God is sending you confrontation in the form of reality checks. The lies, the lack of integrity, the emotional instability, or the spiritual inconsistency, you didn't imagine those things. They're signs. The danger comes when you become so emotionally invested in the idea of someone that you ignore the reality of who they are. Red flags don't disappear because you love harder. They don't go away because you pray longer. Sometimes love is not enough to fix what someone is unwilling to change, and God, in His wisdom, will let the red flags become louder until you can't ignore them anymore. Not because He's cruel, but because he loves you too much to let you build your future on a foundation that's already cracked. There are moments when someone's presence begins to slowly drain your joy, diminish your worth, or distract your focus from God. You find yourself making excuses for behavior you once said you'd never tolerate. You start compromising in areas where you were once firm. That's not love maturing. That's discernment being silenced. When your boundaries become blurred and your standards start to slip, it's often because you're trying to keep something God is trying to remove. God is not trying to take something good from you. He's trying to protect you from what looks good but isn't right. Every time you overlook a red flag, you are telling your future self to pay for your present denial. God doesn't expose flaws to shame people, but to protect his children. So when he allows you to see clearly, through repeated behavior, through uncomfortable patterns, don't turn a blind eye. He's not trying to make you lonely. He's trying to keep you safe. The red flags are not the enemy, ignoring them is. When you finally face them, you position yourself for God's best rather than settling for what your heart is trying to convince you is enough. When God doesn't want you with someone, one of the signs that often gets overlooked is the gradual loss of spiritual vitality. A relationship that is not from him may not start with fireworks of conflict or obvious signs of dysfunction. Sometimes the change is subtle. You begin to notice that your fire for prayer starts to flicker. Your desire for the word weakens. Your focus on God's purpose for your life begins to fade into the background. It's not that you've suddenly walked away from God, it's that the relationship you're in has started to crowd him out. When a connection drains you spiritually rather than fuels you, it's a warning sign that God may not be in it. A relationship aligned with God will push you closer to him, not pull you away. It will challenge you to grow, not cause you to compromise. When the person you're with makes you feel like you have to dim your light so they can shine, or stay silent about your convictions to keep the peace, that's not partnership, it's bondage. God created you with a purpose, and anything or anyone that becomes a weight to your walk is not sent by him. The right person will not compete with your calling. They will complement it. They will cover it. They will celebrate it. But if instead you find yourself spiritually stagnant, doing less, feeling less, becoming less, then that relationship is costing you more than you realize. Sometimes it doesn't even look negative on the surface. You might be having fun, enjoying each other's company, planning for the future, but in the process, the things of God start to feel distant. You used to run to him with everything. Now you second, guess if he would even approve of what you're building. Your prayers become shorter. Your worship feels shallow. You become more emotionally entangled and less spiritually grounded. That's not love. That's spiritual erosion, and God allows that uneasiness to rise, not to shame you, but to wake you up before it's too late. We often talk about compatibility in terms of interests, goals, and personality, but spiritual compatibility is foundational. If they don't encourage your walk, if they're lukewarm about your values, if they resist or mock the things you hold sacred, then no matter how charming, attractive, or well-meaning they are, they're not meant to go where God is taking you. Two cannot walk together unless they agree, and agreement is not just about opinions, it's about direction. If you're serious about your destiny, you can't afford to be yoked to someone going the opposite way. God doesn't just assign people based on chemistry or comfort. He aligns based on calling. He knows what you need to stay strong in him, and he knows who will help or hinder that growth. So when you start to feel spiritually stuck, When your hunger for the things of God starts to fade and you can't figure out why, pause and look around. Sometimes it's not that God left you. It's that you're tied to someone he never sent. And until you release what's draining you, you won't have the capacity to receive what's meant to build you. When God doesn't want you with someone, he doesn't always say it with words. Sometimes he speaks through the shifting of circumstances, the closing of doors, and the disruptions you didn't ask for but can't avoid. This divine disruption is not random, it's intentional. It's God intervening on your behalf because he sees what you cannot see. He knows the outcome of a relationship before it begins, so when he starts allowing roadblocks, delays, and repeated frustrations to show up every time you try to move forward with someone, it's not to punish you, it's to redirect you. It may feel like rejection, but in truth, it's protection. There are times when everything seems to go wrong at once. You try to plan a future with this person, but nothing works out smoothly. Opportunities disappear, conversations become strained, the connection starts to feel forced. You try to salvage it with effort, prayer, and patience, but instead of progress, you get more resistance. That's not always the enemy at work. Sometimes it's God himself, frustrating your plans because he knows that what you are building is not his best for you. We love to quote that God opens doors no man can shut, but we must also accept that he shuts doors no man can open. We often pray for God to lead us, to direct our steps, to make his will clear. But when he starts closing doors, we panic. We think something is wrong, but closed doors are just as much guidance as open ones. Divine disruption doesn't always feel good. It can be disappointing, even heartbreaking. But God isn't trying to harm you. He's interrupting your journey to save you from a destination that would have harmed your spirit, your peace, or your purpose. You may feel tempted to force it, to push through the resistance and convince yourself that perseverance is what's needed. But forcing something that God is blocking will never bring you peace. What he ordains, he sustains. What he blesses, he breathes life into. And when the life starts draining out of something, when it feels like you're the only one trying to make it work, that's often a sign that God is stepping back to let you see the truth. Sometimes the silence, the unanswered prayers, the conflicts that don't resolve, those are God's loudest answers. It's hard to let go, especially when you've imagined a future with someone. But it's harder to live outside of God's will. Divine disruption may hurt for a season, but it spares you from years of regret. When you're in something that God never intended, he will begin to withdraw his hand of favor, not out of anger, but out of mercy, because he would rather disappoint your current desires than allow you to forfeit your destiny. So when the doors close, when the signs multiply, when the peace leaves and the process begins to break down, don't fight the disruption. Pay attention. God's no is often the first step toward his better yes. When God doesn't want you with someone, he often confirms it through both internal conviction and external counsel. Sometimes you're not sure. Your emotions are involved. You're torn between what your heart is saying and what your spirit is sensing. That's when God, in his faithfulness, begins to speak, not always through thunder or signs in the sky, but through that quiet voice inside, the stillness or unrest that sits in your chest after you've prayed. It's that moment when you ask God for clarity, and instead of excitement, you feel a heaviness. Instead of peace, you feel resistance. And no matter how much you try to talk yourself into staying, something within you just doesn't feel settled. That's the Holy Spirit doing what he was sent to do, guide you into truth, We often ignore that inner check because it's not what we want to hear. We assume that silence means we should keep going, but God's silence can sometimes be his clearest answer. When you're not hearing a yes, you're not being led forward. When there's no peace, no joy, no clarity, you're being told to pause. The voice of God doesn't always say, "Turn around." Sometimes it just stops speaking when you're walking towards something he never ordained. That uneasy feeling, that lack of joy, that spiritual discomfort, it's not your imagination. It's the Spirit trying to protect you before the damage is done. And when you're really unsure, God often sends confirmation through wise counsel. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with people who love you and love God. Not everyone can speak into your situation, but those who are spiritually mature and genuinely care about your well-being often carry discernment that you, in your emotional state, may be missing. They see what you overlook. They hear what you filter. When more than one godly person begins to express concern or tell you, something's not right, take it seriously. That's not gossip. That's grace. God uses people, mentors, pastors, parents, close friends, to speak truth when our own feelings make it hard to see. It's tempting to dismiss what others say because it doesn't match the narrative you've created in your mind. You might think they just don't know them like I do, and maybe they don't, but sometimes God reveals the true nature of someone through how they make others feel, not just how they make you feel. You might be emotionally attached, but those around you can often see with clearer eyes. When you're in God's will, he confirms it, not just once, but again and again, through peace, through joy, through alignment. But when you're outside of it, the confirmations will be subtle but consistent. Unrest, confusion, godly counsel that contradicts your desires. Don't ignore it. That's not resistance to fight through. It's redirection to trust. And if you'll listen, if you'll lay aside your pride and your plans, you'll hear him saying, "This is not my best for you. Wait, I have more." So if you find yourself wrestling with peace, ignoring red flags, feeling spiritually dry, facing constant disruption, or hearing clear counsel that challenges your desires, pause. These are not just inconveniences or coincidences. They are God's fingerprints, guiding you away from something that may feel right, but isn't rooted in his will. Love is not proven by how much you endure for it, but by how much it aligns with the heart of God. When God says no, it's never to withhold good from you. It's to protect what he placed inside you and to prepare you for a relationship that honors him and brings true peace. Don't settle for connection when God is calling you to covenant. Don't fight to keep what God is trying to remove. Let go, listen, and trust, because his no today is often the doorway to a far greater yes tomorrow.